The snow fell in whispers that night, each flake a tiny ghost against the black canvas of the forest. I shouldn't have been out there. Not alone. Not after dark. Not when the winter had turned vicious enough to freeze breath in your lungs, but the general store had needed supplies from the old Miller cabin, and I was the only one willing to make the trek. Being willing and being wanted were two different things in a town like Millbrook, and I'd learned long ago which category I fell into. My boots crunched through the crystallized crust, each step a small violation of the silence. The cold bit through my worn coat, the one I'd patched 3 times this season alone, and my fingers had gone numb inside my threadbare gloves an hour ago. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness like a plea, illuminating nothing but more snow, more trees, more emptiness. I'd always been the odd one. Too quiet for some, too observant for others. My pale blonde hair, nearly white in the right light, had earned me whispers since childhood. Ghost girl, they called me in elementary school. Ice princess, they sneered in high school. Now, at 23, they mostly just ignored me, which somehow hurt worse than the names ever had. I worked at the general store, lived in a cramped apartment above the old pharmacy, and existed in the margins of a town that had never quite figured out what to do with me. The wind picked up, howling through the pines with a voice that sounded almost human, almost like a cry. I stopped, my heart suddenly loud in my ears. There it was again, a sound that didn't belong to the wind or the trees or the night. A whimper. Weak, desperate. My flashlight swept left, then right. Nothing but shadows dancing between the trunks. I should have kept walking. I should have minded my own business. Gotten back to town before the storm that had been threatening all day finally broke. Should have. Could have. Would have. The story of my life. Instead, I followed the sound. It led me off the path, through a stand of birches that looked skeletal against the sky. My light caught something dark against the white. A shape that didn't belong. As I drew closer, my breath caught. A wolf pup. No, not quite a pup. Too large for that. Maybe 6 months old, but still young. Still vulnerable. It lay in a small hollow, surrounded by crimson-stained snow that looked black in my flashlight's beam. Its fur was dark as midnight, except where blood had matted it down. One of its back legs was twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. Its eyes opened as I approached. Amber eyes that seemed too aware, too intelligent for an animal. They fixed on me with an intensity that froze me mid-step. I'd seen wolves before, from a distance. Millbrook sat on the edge of the Thornridge Forest, a vast wilderness that stretched for hundreds of miles. We knew to respect the forest and its inhabitants. We knew to keep our distance, but this creature was dying. I could see it in the shallow rise and fall of its chest, in the way its eyes began to dim, even as they watched me. "Hey," I whispered, crouching down but keeping my distance. "Hey, it's okay." It whimpered again, a sound so pitiful it cracked something open in my chest. I thought of all the times I'd felt alone, hurt, invisible. All the times I'd needed someone to see me, to care, and found only indifference. I couldn't leave it. I couldn't walk away. My mother's voice echoed in my memory, one of the few clear recollections I had of her before she'd left when I was 7. "Emma," she'd said, her hands cupping my face. "You have the softest heart I've ever known. Don't let this world harden it. Promise me." I'd promised. And I'd kept that promise, even when it cost me. Slowly, carefully, I extended my hand. The wolf pup's eyes tracked the movement. It should have growled, should have tried to bite, should have done something other than simply watch me with those haunting amber eyes. "I'm going to help you," I said softly. "I don't know how, but I'm going to try." My fingers touched its fur. The world exploded. Heat erupted along my collarbone, searing and absolute. I gasped, my hand flying to my chest, but the sensation only intensified. It felt like someone had pressed a brand against my skin, like fire was writing something into my very bones. The wolf pup's eyes widened, glowing suddenly, brilliantly, and I felt something pass between us, a recognition, an acknowledgement, a bond forming in the space of a heartbeat. Then the light faded, and I was left gasping in the snow, my hand still outstretched, my collarbone burning with a heat that defied the winter cold. The wolf pup whimpered once more, softer now, and its eyes began to close. "No," I breathed. "No, no, no. Stay with me. I didn't think. I couldn't afford to think. I shrugged off my coat despite the cold and wrapped it around the creature as gently as I could. It was heavier than I'd expected, solid muscle beneath the fur and blood. Every shift made it whine in pain, but it didn't try to bite me. It just watched me with those eyes that seemed to understand everything. I lifted it into my arms, staggering under the weight. My flashlight I left behind. I needed both hands. The darkness pressed in around me, but that strange heat in my collarbone had become a kind of compass. I didn't understand it, couldn't explain it, but I followed it anyway, stumbling back toward the path. The walk back to town took twice as long as it should have. My arms screamed in protest, my muscles burning with the effort of carrying the injured wolf. The creature's breathing grew shallower with each step, each minute. I talked to it the whole way. Nonsense, mostly. Promises I had no business making. You're going to be okay. I'll find help. There's got to be someone who knows how to. Just hold on. Please hold on. The lights of Millbrook finally appeared through the trees, warm yellow squares that had never looked so welcoming. But as I stumbled onto Main Street, my arms shaking with exhaustion, I realized I had no plan. The vet clinic was closed. Dr. Harrison only worked 3 days a week, and this wasn't one of them. The animal shelter was on the other side of town, and I wasn't sure they'd even take a wolf. A truck rumbled past, its headlights sweeping over me. It stopped abruptly, reverse lights flashing as it backed up. My heart sank as I recognized it, Jackson Webb's beat-up Ford, which meant Jackson himself was about to make my night even worse. The driver's door opened, and Jackson climbed out, his broad frame blocking the streetlight. He'd been 2 years ahead of me in school, captain of the football team. The kind of guy who'd never noticed I existed until he needed someone to make himself feel bigger. Well, he drawled, his breath misting in the cold. If it isn't the Ice Princess, what the hell do you have there? Nothing, I said quickly, turning away. Just heading home. That doesn't look like nothing. He moved closer, and I caught the smell of beer on his breath. His eyes widened when he saw the wolf in my arms. Jesus Christ, Emma. Is that a wolf? Are you insane? It's hurt, I said, hating how defensive I sounded. I found it in the forest. It needs help. It needs a bullet, Jackson said flatly. Those things are dangerous. They've been coming closer to town lately, getting bolder. Last week, one of them killed 2 of Henderson's sheep. This one didn't kill anything. It's young. It's dying. Jackson's face hardened, all the more reason to put it out of its misery. Give it here. No. The word came out stronger than I'd intended. I backed up a step, my arms tightening protectively around the wolf. I'm taking it home. I'm going to help it. You're going to get yourself killed is what you're going to do. Jackson shook his head. But fine, your funeral. Just don't come crying to me when it wakes up and tears your throat out. He climbed back into his truck and drove off, leaving me standing in the middle of the street with a dying wolf in my arms and no idea what I was doing. My apartment was 3 blocks away. I made it there on pure stubbornness, my legs nearly giving out as I climbed the stairs. The door stuck. It always did. And I had to hip-check it open, nearly dropping my burden in the process. Inside, I laid the wolf carefully on my couch, which was probably a terrible idea, but I wasn't thinking clearly anymore. The heat in my collarbone hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown more intense. A constant reminder of that moment in the forest when something fundamental had shifted. I pulled my collar aside and looked down. There, burned into my skin just above my collarbone, was a mark. It looked like it had always been there, like it was part of me. But I knew. It hadn't existed an hour ago. The design was intricate. A crescent moon overlaid with what looked like a crown of thorns or branches, all rendered in lines that seemed to shimmer between silver and black depending on the light. I touched it with trembling fingers. It was warm, almost hot, but it didn't hurt anymore. It felt right, like something missing had finally clicked into place. A soft whine drew my attention back to the wolf. Its eyes were open again, watching me with that same uncanny intelligence. I didn't understand what had happened, what this mark meant, why touching this creature had felt like touching fate itself. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that my life had just changed in ways I couldn't begin to comprehend. The wolf's breathing hitched, its eyes beginning to flutter closed once more. "No," I whispered, kneeling beside the couch. "Stay with me. Just a little longer. I'll figure this out. I promise." I reached for my phone, my mind racing through options. There had to be someone, somewhere, who could help. Someone who understood wolves, who understood whatever this was. My fingers hovered over the screen, and then I remembered. 3 months ago, a man had come into the general store, tall, dark-haired, with eyes that seemed to see through everything. He'd been passing through, he'd said, but he'd given me his card. "If you ever need anything unusual," he'd told me, his voice low and serious, "call this number." I'd thought it was strange at the time, had almost thrown the card away, but something had made me keep it, tucked into my wallet behind my driver's license. I pulled it out now. The card was simple, black with silver lettering, Silas Crane, and a phone number. Nothing else. No business name, no address, no indication of what kind of unusual help he might provide. The wolf whimpered again, weaker this time. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up when a voice answered, deep and rough like gravel. "This is Crane." My voice caught. "I don't know if you remember me. You came into the general store in Millbrook a few months ago. You gave me your card." Silence on the other end, then, "The girl with the pale hair, Emma." He remembered my name. I hadn't even been sure he'd looked at my name tag. "I found something," I said in a rush. "In the forest. A wolf, injured, and when I touched it, something happened. There's a mark on my skin, and I don't understand what's happening, but it's dying, and I don't know what to do." Another pause. Longer this time. When Crane spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder, more urgent. "Describe the mark." "It's a crescent moon, with a crown of branches or thorns. It appeared when I touched the wolf. It burned into my skin. I heard what sounded like a sharp intake of breath. Then, don't move. Don't let anyone near that wolf. I'm 2 hours away. Can you keep it alive for 2 hours? I'll try," I said. "But I don't know. Emma." His voice was firm, commanding. "Listen to me carefully. That's not just a wolf. And that mark means you've just done something that's going to change everything. Keep it warm. Keep it breathing. I'm on my way." He hung up. I stared at my phone, my mind reeling. Not just a wolf. What did that mean? I looked at the creature on my couch, at its labored breathing and blood-matted fur. Its eyes opened one more time, meeting mine, and I saw something in their amber depths that made my breath catch. Recognition. As if it knew me, as if it had been waiting for me. The heat in my collarbone pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat that wasn't quite my own. And somewhere in the distance, I could have sworn I heard a howl. Long, mournful, and somehow full of both grief and rage. The 2 hours stretched into an eternity measured in heartbeats, mine and the wolf's, which seemed to synchronize in a way that defied logic. I'd done what I could with the limited supplies in my apartment, wrapped the injured leg as gently as possible using torn bed sheets, cleaned the worst of the blood with warm water and dish soap, covered the creature with every blanket I owned. The wolf had watched me through it all, never growling, never snapping, just observing with those impossibly intelligent eyes. Now I sat on the floor beside the couch, my hand resting lightly on its chest, feeling the shallow rise and fall of its breathing. The mark on my collarbone had stopped burning, but it remained warm, a constant presence that made me hyper-aware of every shift in the wolf's condition. When its breathing grew shallower, the mark grew hotter. When it seemed to stabilize, the heat eased. It was as if we were connected by some invisible thread, each tug and pull transmitted through that strange symbol on my skin. I'd tried to research it on my phone, searched for wolf marks, crescent moon symbols, anything that might explain what had happened. But the internet offered nothing but mythology and folklore, stories of werewolves and shapeshifters that seemed too fantastical to be real. Yet here I was, with a mark that shouldn't exist, and a wolf that looked at me like it understood every thought passing through my mind. The knock on my door came at exactly midnight. I knew because I'd been watching the clock, counting down the minutes since Crane's call. I stood carefully, my legs stiff from sitting on the floor, and moved to the door. Through the peephole I saw him. Silas Crane looked exactly as I remembered. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar, and a face that seemed carved from stone. But there was something different now, something I hadn't noticed in the bright fluorescence of the general store. His eyes, when they met mine through the glass, were the same amber as the wolf's. I opened the door. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his gaze sweeping the small apartment before landing on the couch. His entire body went rigid. For a moment, he just stared, and I saw something flicker across his face. Shock, recognition, and something that looked almost like grief. "How long has it been like this?" His voice was rough, strained. "Since I found it. Maybe 3 hours now." I closed the door, suddenly aware of how shabby my apartment must look to someone who carried himself with such quiet authority. "I did what I could, but I don't know. You did more than you know." He moved to the couch, kneeling beside it with a grace that seemed at odds with his size. His hand hovered over the wolf's head, trembling slightly, before he finally made contact. The moment his skin touched fur, the wolf's eyes opened. What happened next made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. The wolf looked at Crane, and something passed between them, a communication too complex for words. The amber eyes seemed to glow brighter, and Crane's expression transformed into something raw and painful. He bowed his head, his jaw clenching, and when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I should have been there. I should have protected you." The wolf made a soft sound, almost like a reassurance, and Crane's shoulders shook once before he regained control. When he looked up at me, his eyes were blazing with an intensity that made me take an involuntary step backward. "Show me the mark." It wasn't a request. I pulled my collar aside, revealing the symbol on my collarbone. Crane's eyes widened, and he rose to his feet so quickly I flinched. "Do you know what you've done?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "No," I said honestly. "I just found it in the forest. It was dying. I couldn't—" "You bonded with the heir to the Thornridge pack." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small space like a caged animal. "That mark is the Alpha King's seal. It means the heir has chosen you as pack, as family, as—" He stopped, his eyes boring into mine. "Do you understand what I'm telling you?" I shook my head, my mind struggling to process his words. Alpha King. Pack. Heir. The words felt too large, too impossible. Crane took a breath, visibly trying to calm himself. The wolves in Thornridge Forest aren't just wolves. They're shifters. Beings who can take both human and wolf form. The packs have existed for centuries, hidden from human sight, living by their own laws. And that creature on your couch is not just any shifter. It's Dane Thornridge, son of the Alpha King, heir to the most powerful pack in the Northern Territories. The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. That's not possible. Werewolves aren't real. They're just stories. Stories based on truth. Crane's expression was grim. 3 days ago, there was an ambush. Rogues, shifters without packs, outcasts, attacked during a border patrol. Dane was with his father and the senior pack members. Most of them made it out. Dane was separated, injured. We've been searching for him ever since. His eyes flickered to the wolf, to Dane. His father is half mad with grief. The entire pack is on the edge of war. I looked at the creature on my couch, trying to reconcile what Crane was saying with what I saw. A prince, an heir. A being that could apparently shift between human and animal form. It was insane. All of it was insane. And yet, the mark on my collarbone burned with a truth I couldn't deny. "Why me?" I whispered. "Why would he bond with me?" "That's not a question I can answer." Crane moved back to the couch, his expression softening as he looked at Dane. "The bond forms when a shifter recognizes someone as pack, as kin. It's instinctive, primal. Usually it happens between blood family or chosen mates. For an heir to bond with a human..." He shook his head. "I've never heard of it happening before. It means he saw something in you, trusted you, recognized you as someone worth binding his life to." The weight of those words settled over me like snow. What happens now? Now, I need to get him back to Pack Lands, back to his father. The Alpha King has healers, resources I don't have here. Crane looked at me, his expression unreadable. "And you need to come with us." "What?" "No. I can't just... The bond goes both ways, Emma." He gestured to my collarbone. That mark means you're Pack now, whether you understand it or not. It means you can feel him, sense him. It also means he's drawing strength from you, using your life force to keep himself alive. If you stay here, away from Packlands where he can heal properly, you'll both fade. The bond will kill you both. I stared at him, horror and disbelief warring in my chest. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to help, and that's exactly why the bond formed. Crane's voice gentled. Most people would have left him to die. You didn't. You saw something hurt and vulnerable, and you chose compassion. That kind of heart is rare, Emma, especially in this world. My mother's voice echoed in my memory again. Don't let this world harden your heart. I looked at Dane, at the steady rise and fall of his breathing, at the way his eyes tracked my every movement. I thought about Jackson's words, put it out of its misery, and how easily I could have walked away. Should have walked away by any rational measure. But I hadn't. And now, I was bound to a creature I didn't understand, marked with a symbol that declared me part of a world I hadn't known existed. How long do we have? I asked quietly. I need to move him now. His condition is deteriorating. Crane pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm calling in support. We'll take him to Packlands tonight. Will he survive the journey? Crane's hesitation told me everything. I don't know, but staying here guarantees he won't. I nodded slowly, my mind made up even as fear coiled in my stomach. Then we go. I'll need to pack some things, call my work. Emma. Crane's hand caught my arm, his grip firm, but not painful. You need to understand what you're walking into. The Thornridge Pack is not like your human world. We have different laws, different customs. The Alpha King is not a man who accepts change easily when he learns his heir has bonded with a human. He paused. There will be consequences. There will be those who see you as a weakness, a threat. You'll be challenged, tested. Will he hurt me? The question came out smaller than I'd intended. The Alpha King? No, the bond makes you untouchable in that regard. Harming you would harm Dane, but the Pack? Crane's amber eyes were serious. Not everyone will accept you. Some will see the bond as an abomination. Others will try to use you as leverage. You'll need to be strong, Emma, stronger than you've ever been. I thought about my life in Millbrook. The loneliness, the invisibility, the sense that I'd been waiting for something without knowing what it was. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment my mother had been preparing me for when she'd made me promise not to lose myself. I'm stronger than I look, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Something like respect flickered in Crane's eyes. I believe you are. Now pack quickly. We leave in 20 minutes. He turned back to Dane, speaking in low tones I couldn't quite hear, while I moved to my bedroom. I grabbed a duffel bag and threw in clothes without really seeing them. Jeans, sweaters, the warmest jacket I owned. My hands were shaking, adrenaline and fear making my movements clumsy. At the last moment, I grabbed the small wooden box on my dresser, the one that held my mother's letters, and the few photographs I had of her. If I was walking into a new world, I wanted something of my old one with me. When I returned to the living room, Crane had somehow managed to wrap Dane in a way that would allow him to be carried. The wolf looked even worse now, his breathing labored, his eyes dim. But when I approached, those eyes found mine, and I felt the bond pulse between us. Reassurance and plea mixed together. I'm here, I whispered, kneeling beside him. I'm not leaving you. A soft sound, almost like a sigh, escaped him. Crane lifted Dane with a gentleness that belied his strength, cradling the large wolf as if he weighed nothing. My truck is outside. Stay close to me. Don't speak to anyone who approaches us. We made our way down the stairs and into the cold night. Crane's truck was a massive black SUV that looked like it could drive through a wall without slowing down. He settled Dane in the back seat, surrounding him with blankets, while I climbed into the passenger side. As we pulled away from my apartment, I looked back at the small lit windows, at the life I was leaving behind. Part of me wondered if I'd ever see it again. If after tonight, after whatever waited for me in Thornridge Forest, I'd still be the same Emma who'd walked into those woods looking for a dying wolf. The mark on my collarbone pulsed warmly, and somehow I knew the answer was no. We drove in silence for the first hour, leaving Millbrook behind and heading deeper into the wilderness. The road grew rougher, less maintained, until we were barely following a road at all. Just a path through the trees that Crane seemed to know by instinct. "Tell me about him," I said finally, breaking the silence. "About Dane." Crane was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "He's 24. Strong, intelligent, compassionate. Everything an heir should be. His father has been grooming him to take over as Alpha King since he was a child." He paused. "But Dane has always been different. More interested in protecting than dominating. More concerned with pack welfare than pack strength. Some see it as weakness. I see it as evolution. And you? What's your role in all this?" "I'm the Beta. Second in command. Dane's bodyguard. Advisor. Brother, in all but blood." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I should have been with him during that patrol. If I had been..." "You can't know that would have changed anything," I said softly. He glanced at me, surprise flickering across his face. "You sound certain." "I've spent a lot of time wondering if I could have changed things. If I'd been different, better, more, something. My mother might have stayed, my father might have cared, the town might have accepted me." I looked out at the dark forest rushing past. "But I've learned that some things happen regardless of what we do. All we can control is how we respond." Crane was silent for a moment, then quietly, "You're going to need that wisdom in the days ahead." The trees began to change as we drove deeper into pack territory. They grew larger, older, their branches intertwining overhead to form a canopy that blocked out the stars. The air itself felt different, charged with something I couldn't name. Magic, maybe, or just the weight of centuries of secrets. Then, through the darkness, I saw lights. Not the harsh fluorescent glow of civilization, but softer illumination. Lanterns, maybe, or torches. They dotted the forest ahead like stars fallen to earth, marking a path that led to something vast and magnificent. "Welcome," Crane said, his voice rough with emotion, "to Thornridge." And as we rounded the final curve, I saw it. A compound that looked like it had grown from the forest itself, built from stone and wood that seemed to pulse with life. Buildings rose between the trees, connected by walkways and bridges, all centered around a massive lodge that dominated the clearing like a castle from another age. And standing on the steps of that lodge, illuminated by torchlight, was a figure that made my breath catch. Tall and powerful, with silver streaking through dark hair, he stood with the bearing of a king, because that's exactly what he was. Even from a distance, I could see the resemblance to the wolf in the back seat. The same proud lines, the same fierce intelligence. The Alpha King had been waiting for us. As Crane pulled to a stop, the king's eyes found mine through the windshield, and I saw them widen with shock. His gaze dropped to my collarbone, to where the mark must have been visible even through my shirt, and his expression transformed into something terrible and magnificent. Recognition, understanding, and something that looked almost like hope. Crane killed the engine. "Whatever happens in the next few minutes, Emma, remember, the bond makes you family. The mark makes you pack, and that means you belong here, whether anyone likes it or not." He opened his door and stepped out. After a heartbeat's hesitation, I followed. The Alpha King descended the steps slowly, his eyes never leaving mine, and I realized with a start that I wasn't afraid. The mark on my collarbone burned warm and steady, like an anchor in a storm, and somehow I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that I was exactly where I needed to be, even if I had no idea what came next. The Alpha King moved like controlled violence, each step deliberate and weighted with power. Up close, he was even more imposing. Easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed carved from granite, and eyes that glowed amber in the torchlight. Those eyes swept over me with an intensity that should have been terrifying, but the mark on my collarbone pulsed with warmth, and I stood my ground. "Show me," he commanded, his voice carrying the rough edge of a man barely holding himself together. I pulled my collar aside without hesitation, revealing the mark. The Alpha King's breath actually caught, and for a moment, the powerful facade cracked to reveal raw, desperate hope underneath. "My son lives," he whispered, and the words carried such weight that several figures emerged from the shadows of the lodge, pack members, I realized, drawn by their king's emotion. "Barely," Crane said, moving to open the back door of the SUV. "He needs the healers. Now. The Alpha King was there in an instant, reaching into the vehicle with hands that trembled slightly. When he gathered Dane into his arms, the transformation in his expression was profound, from king to father in the space of a heartbeat. He held his son close, his face pressed against the dark fur, and I heard him murmur something too soft to catch. Then his eyes snapped to mine again. "You saved him." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "I found him in the forest. He was dying. I couldn't leave him. The bond—" He stopped, his gaze dropping to the mark again. "Explain how this happened." I touched him. The words sounded inadequate even as I spoke them. I just wanted to help, and when my hand made contact, this appeared. It burned into my skin. Several of the gathered pack members gasped. I caught fragments of whispered conversations. Impossible. Human. Abomination. But the Alpha King silenced them with a single look. "Inside," he ordered. "Healers to the East Wing immediately. Crane with me. And you," his eyes found mine. "What's your name?" "Emma. Emma Hartley." "Emma Hartley, you will stay close. We have much to discuss, but first, my son needs to live." He turned and strode toward the lodge, carrying Dane with a tenderness that contradicted his fearsome presence. Crane gestured for me to follow, and I fell into step beside him, acutely aware of the stairs tracking my every movement. The lodge's interior was breathtaking. All soaring ceilings supported by massive timber beams, stone fireplaces large enough to stand in, and tapestries that must have been centuries old. But I barely had time to take it in before we were moving through hallways that twisted deeper into the compound. The air grew warmer, tinged with herbs and something else, a sort of electric energy that made my skin prickle. We entered a large room that looked like a cross between a hospital and an apothecary. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars and bottles and dried plants I couldn't name. In the center stood a wide bed, already prepared with clean linens. The Alpha King laid Dane down carefully, stepping back as 3 women swept into the room. The healers. I knew it instinctively, the same way I'd known the Alpha King's identity. They moved with purpose and grace, their hands already glowing with a soft golden light as they assessed Dane's injuries. The oldest of them, a woman with silver hair and eyes like storm clouds, looked up at the Alpha King. "The leg is badly broken, internal bleeding. He's lost too much blood, been in wolf form too long while injured." Her gaze shifted to me, sharpening. "But there's something else, a tether. He's pulling life force from somewhere." "From her," the Alpha King said, gesturing to me. "He bonded with the human. She carries his mark." The healer's eyes widened. "That's unprecedented. But it explains why he's still alive. The bond has been keeping him anchored." She approached me slowly, her glowing hands reaching toward my collarbone. "May I?" I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Her fingers brushed the mark, and I felt a jolt of something: recognition, assessment, approval. She pulled back, wonder evident on her weathered face. "It's genuine. A true pack bond, sealed with the heir's mark." She turned back to the Alpha King. "This changes things, my lord. With her here, his chances of survival increase significantly. The bond will stabilize him during the healing. Then she stays." The Alpha King's tone brooked no argument. "Do whatever you must to save my son." The healers went to work, their glowing hands moving over Dane's body. I watched, transfixed, as bones began to realign with sickening cracks, as wounds knitted themselves closed, as the golden light seemed to chase away the shadow of death that had clung to him. But it was clearly taking a toll. The healers' faces grew strained, their movements slower. "It's not enough," the storm-eyed healer said finally. "He's too far gone. We need—" She stopped, her eyes finding mine again. "We need the bond-bearer to help anchor him. Her life force is already connected to his. If we can channel through her—" "No," the Alpha King said immediately. "It could kill her. It will kill him if we don't try," the healer countered. "My lord, the bond exists for a reason. She's Pack now, whether we understand how or why, and Pack helps Pack survive." All eyes turned to me. I felt the weight of their expectations, their hope, their doubt. The mark on my collarbone burned hotter than ever, and I could feel Dane through it, his pain, his weakness, his desperate fight to stay alive. "What do I need to do?" I asked. The Alpha King's expression flickered with something that might have been respect. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "No, we can't," I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. "He's dying. You said it yourself. The bond makes me pack. So let me help him. Tell me what to do." The storm-eyed healer moved to the bedside, gesturing for me to join her. "Place your hand over his heart. I'll guide the energy, but you need to be willing to share your strength with him. It will hurt. You'll feel everything he's feeling, the pain, the trauma. Some bond bearers can't handle it. They break away, and the backlash can be severe." "I won't break away," I said, with a certainty I didn't entirely feel. I moved to the bed, placing my hand carefully on Dane's chest. His fur was warm beneath my palm, and I could feel his heartbeat, weak, irregular, fading. The healer's hand covered mine, and the golden light intensified. Then the world exploded into sensation. Pain lanced through me, sharp and terrible and all-consuming. I felt the broken bone grinding, felt the internal bleeding, felt every injury as if it were my own. My vision blurred, my knees buckled, but I kept my hand in place. Through the pain, I felt something else. Dane's consciousness, dim and flickering like a candle in a storm. He was so tired, so ready to let go. "No," I thought fiercely, pouring every ounce of will I possessed into that mental shout. "You don't get to give up. I didn't drag you through a frozen forest just so you could quit now. Fight, damn you." Something stirred in that distant consciousness. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. I pushed harder, imagining my strength flowing into him like water into a drought-stricken land. Images flashed through my mind, memories that weren't mine. Running through moonlit forests, the joy of the hunt, the weight of responsibility, the fear of failing those who depended on him, and underneath it all, bone-deep loneliness that echoed my own. "You're not alone anymore," I told him. "I'm here. Your father's here. Your pack is here. Come back." The heartbeat under my palm strengthened. Just a little. Just enough. The golden light flared brighter, and I heard the healer gasp. "She's doing it. She's pulling him back. Keep going, Emma. Don't let go." I didn't. Even when the pain threatened to drag me under, even when my own heartbeat seemed to sync with Dane's faltering rhythm, I held on. I thought about every time I'd wanted to give up, every moment I'd felt invisible and worthless, and I used that remembered pain as fuel. If I could survive all those small deaths of the spirit, then Dane could survive this. Time lost meaning. There was only the bond, the golden light, the desperate fight to keep both of us anchored to life. At some point, I realized I was crying, tears streaming down my face unchecked. At another point, I heard the Alpha King's voice, rough with emotion, telling me I'd done enough, that I should rest. But I didn't let go. Not until Dane's heartbeat steadied. Not until his breathing evened out. Not until I felt his consciousness strengthen and settle, no longer flickering but burning steady and true. Only then did I let the darkness take me. I woke to softness, a bed far more comfortable than my threadbare mattress back home, with sheets that felt like silk against my skin. For a disoriented moment, I thought I'd dreamed everything: the wolf, the mark, the impossible journey into a hidden world. But then I tried to sit up, and pain lanced through every muscle in my body, settling the question of reality definitively. Easy. A gentle hand pressed against my shoulder, easing me back down. I blinked my vision clear and found the storm-eyed healer sitting beside the bed, a cup of something steaming in her hand. "You've been unconscious for 16 hours. Your body needs time to recover from the bonding ritual." "Dane," I croaked, my throat dessert dry. "Is he alive? Healing?" "Thanks to you." She helped me sit up slowly, propping pillows behind me. "Here. Drink this. It'll help with the pain and fatigue." The liquid was bitter but warming, spreading through my chest like liquid sunlight. I drank it all, then looked around the room for the first time. It was beautiful. Stone walls softened by tapestries, a fireplace crackling with warmth, windows that looked out onto a forest view that seemed to glow with morning light. Where am I? The east wing of the main lodge. These are the heir's private chambers. At my shocked expression, she smiled slightly. The Alpha King insisted. You're bonded to his son. That makes you family. And family stays close. Family. The word struck something deep inside me. Can I see him? Dane? He's been asking for you. The healer stood, setting the empty cup aside. He shifted back to human form about 6 hours ago, a good sign that his body is healing properly. But Emma, before you see him? She paused, choosing her words carefully. The bond you share is rare, powerful. Neither of you fully understands it yet, and that can lead to complications. Strong emotions, heightened awareness of each other, an almost compulsive need for proximity. It's going to be intense, I nodded, trying to process that information along with everything else. I understand. I'm not sure you do, but you will. She moved to the door, opening it to reveal Crane standing guard outside. Beta, she's ready. Crane entered, his expression unreadable. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck, but alive. I pushed myself to the edge of the bed, my legs shaky but functional. Take me to him. He's in the next room. Emma. Crane's amber eyes were serious. The pack is in upheaval. Word of the bond has spread. Some see it as a miracle, proof that you were meant to save our prince. Others see it as an abomination, a human corrupting our bloodline. The Alpha King has called a pack gathering for tonight. You'll need to stand before them. Let them see the mark. Accept you into the pack formally. And if they don't accept me, then we have a problem. His expression was grim, but one crisis at a time. Right now, Dane needs to see you're alive. He's been difficult, despite everything. I almost smiled at the carefully chosen word. Difficult how? Let's just say he's threatened to shift and tear through the compound looking for you at least a dozen times. Crane opened a connecting door I hadn't noticed. He needs to see you with his own eyes. The room beyond was similar to mine, but larger, more masculine in its furnishings. And there, in a bed twice the size of the one I'd woken in, was Dane. Not the wolf I'd carried through the snow, but a man. A young man with dark hair that fell across his forehead, sharp features that were handsome even drawn with pain and exhaustion, and those same impossibly amber eyes that had watched me from the forest floor. Those eyes found mine the instant I stepped through the door, and the bond flared to life between us. A recognition so profound it stole my breath. I saw his body relax, tension I hadn't realized he was carrying finally releasing. You're real, he said, his voice rough from disuse but warm, deeper than I'd expected. I thought I'd dreamed you. I moved closer without conscious thought, drawn by that invisible thread connecting us. I'm real, and so are you. He studied my face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. You saved my life. Twice. The healers told me what you did, how you nearly died pulling me back. You would have done the same, I said, though I had no idea if that was true. A slight smile curved his lips. I'd like to think so, but not everyone would have stopped in that forest. Not everyone would have touched a dying wolf. His hand reached out, hesitant, and I met him halfway, our fingers intertwining. The moment we touched, the bond sang between us, and I felt his relief, his gratitude, his wonder. Thank you, Emma Hartley. You're welcome, Dane Thornridge. We stayed like that for a long moment, just holding hands and marveling at the impossible thing that had happened between us. Finally, Crane cleared his throat from the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but we have visitors. The Alpha King is coming, and he's not alone. Dane's expression darkened slightly, though his grip on my hand tightened. Who's with him? The council, all 12 of them. Crane's tone was carefully neutral. They want to see her, to assess whether the bond is genuine, whether she's worthy. She saved my life, Dane said, a low growl entering his voice. That's the only worthiness that matters. You know it's not that simple. Crane looked at me apologetically. The council governs pack law alongside the Alpha King. They're traditionalists. The idea of a human bearing the heir's mark. It challenges everything they believe about bloodlines and succession. Then they need to adapt, Dane said flatly. The bond exists. It's done. Emma is pack now, and anyone who disagrees can take it up with me when I'm strong enough to shift again. Despite the tension, warmth spread through my chest at his fierce protectiveness, but I couldn't let him fight my battles. Not when I barely understood the world I'd stumbled into. Let them come, I said, squeezing his hand once before reluctantly releasing it. I can speak for myself. Dane looked like he wanted to argue, but footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, and then the Alpha King entered, flanked by figures in dark robes that seemed to drink in the light. The council members, 6 men and 6 women, all older, all radiating power and suspicion in equal measure. The Alpha King's eyes found his son first, and relief flickered across his face. You look better. I feel like death, but I'll survive. Dane's gaze moved to the council members. To what do I owe this delegation? An elderly man stepped forward, his silver hair braided with what looked like bones. We come to assess the human, to determine if the bond is genuine or some trick, Her name is Emma, Dane interrupted coldly, and the bond is as genuine as the mark on her skin. Then she won't mind showing us, the man's eyes, pale as ice, fixed on me. Show us this mark, human. Let us see what you claim gives you the right to enter our world. I could feel Dane's anger through the bond, hot and protective. I could feel the Alpha King's tension, the way his hands had curled into fists, but I also felt something else, a test. A moment that would define everything that came after. I stepped forward, pulled my collar aside, and met the council member's cold gaze without flinching. My name is Emma Hartley, I said clearly. I found your heir dying in the snow. I didn't know what he was, didn't know about your world or your laws. I just knew he needed help. This mark appeared when I touched him, binding us together. I don't claim any right to be here. But I'm not leaving either. Not when he still needs me. The council members leaned forward, studying the mark with expressions ranging from wonder to distrust. The silver-haired man reached out as if to touch it, but Dane's growl stopped him mid-motion. No one touches her without permission, he said, his voice carrying an edge that raised the hair on the back of my neck. The council member withdrew his hand, his expression unreadable. The mark is genuine. I sense no deception. He looked at the other council members, who nodded slowly in agreement. But this sets a dangerous precedent. An heir bonded to a human. What happens to pack bloodlines? What happens to succession? What happens? The Alpha King said, his voice carrying absolute authority, is that my son lives. Everything else we figure out as we go. Emma Hartley saved the heir's life at great personal risk. That makes her worthy of pack membership, tradition or no tradition. The pack must vote, another council member said, a woman with scarred hands and hawk-like eyes. It is law. No one enters the pack without pack acceptance. Then we vote tonight, the Alpha King decided. At moonrise we gather. Emma will stand before the pack, and they will decide. His eyes found mine, and I saw both warning and encouragement there. Until then, she remains under my protection and my son's. Any who challenge that challenge me directly. The council members exchanged glances, then bowed and filed out. When they were gone, the Alpha King's shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of leadership showing for just a moment. I'm sorry, he said to me. This is not how we usually welcome pack, but these are unprecedented circumstances. I understand, I said, though I wasn't sure I did. What happens if they vote against me? The silence that followed was answer enough. The hours before moonrise crawled by with agonizing slowness. Crane had taken me back to my room with instructions to rest and prepare, but rest proved impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those cold council faces, heard the barely concealed contempt in their voices. Human. They'd said it like a curse. I stood by the window, watching pack members move through the compound below. Even from this distance, I could see the tension in their movements, catch fragments of heated conversations. Word of the vote had spread quickly. Some gestured angrily toward the main lodge. Others shook their heads, faces troubled. A few looked up toward my window with expressions I couldn't quite read. Curiosity, maybe, or calculation. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. The door opened to reveal a young woman about my age, carrying an armful of dark fabric. She had warm brown skin, kind eyes, and an easy smile that felt like sunlight after storm clouds. Hi, she said, stepping inside. I'm Iris. The Alpha King sent me to help you get ready for tonight. Her eyes swept over my worn jeans and borrowed sweater. We need to make sure you look the part. The part of what? I asked warily. Someone who belongs here. She laid the fabric on the bed, a dress, I realized, in deep forest green. I know this must be overwhelming. One day you're human, living a normal life. The next, you're Pack, bonded to the air, facing a council vote that could determine your entire future. She met my gaze directly. For what it's worth, I think what you did was incredibly brave. The kindness in her voice made my throat tight. Thank you. That means more than you know. Come on. She gestured to the dress. Let's get you ready to face them. The dress fit perfectly, hugging my curves before flowing loose around my legs. The color reminded me of the forest where I'd found Dane, deep and wild and alive. Iris worked on my pale blonde hair, braiding it with a skill that spoke of practice, weaving in thin strips of leather that matched the dress. The council will try to intimidate you, she said as she worked. They'll ask questions designed to make you stumble, to prove you don't understand our ways. Don't let them shake you, and whatever you do, don't show fear. Pack respects strength. I'm not sure I have much strength left, I admitted. Iris's hands stilled in my hair. You walked into a dark forest alone, saved a dying wolf, bonded with the air, and nearly died pulling him back from death. All in less than 2 days. She met my eyes in the mirror. Emma, you have more strength than most of the pack combined. You just need to believe it. A warm pulse from the mark on my collarbone made me gasp softly. Through the bond, I felt Dane, his concern, his desire to be here with me, his frustration at his own weakness. And underneath it all, a fierce certainty that somehow steadied my racing heart. I'm here. His presence seemed to whisper through the bond. You're not alone. I touched the mark, feeling its warmth. Can he feel what I'm feeling right now? The bond goes both ways, Iris confirmed. He's probably going crazy knowing you're about to face the pack without him. She finished the braid and stepped back. There, you look like someone who belongs among wolves. I studied my reflection. The woman looking back seemed stronger somehow, the dress and braided hair transforming me into someone who might actually survive what was coming. But beneath the costume, I was still just Emma, the girl nobody saw, nobody wanted. Not true, came that wordless whisper through the bond. I see you. I want you here. It's time, Iris said softly. Crane is waiting outside to escort you. The walk through the compound was the longest of my life. Pack members lined the pathways, watching as Crane led me toward a massive circular clearing I hadn't seen before. Ancient stones ringed the space, carved with symbols that seemed to shift in the torchlight. The pack gathered there, hundreds of them, their eyes glowing amber in the darkness, their bodies thrumming with barely contained power. At the far end, on a raised platform of stone, sat the Alpha King on what could only be described as a throne. And beside him, against all logic and healer's orders, stood Dane. He looked terrible, pale, leaning heavily on a carved staff, his jaw tight with pain, but his eyes found mine across the clearing, and the bond flared so brightly I stumbled. Crane's hand steadied me. He shouldn't be here, I whispered. Try telling him that, Crane muttered. He threatened to crawl if we didn't let him walk. The 12 council members stood in a semicircle before the throne, their dark robes making them look like shadows given form. The silver-haired one who'd spoken before raised his hand, and silence fell across the clearing like snow. We gather under the full moon to judge a matter of pack law, he intoned, his voice carrying across the space. A human has been marked with the heir's bond. She claims protection as pack, but pack membership must be earned, must be voted upon by those who will call her sister, brother, family. His pale eyes found me. Emma Hartley, step forward. I walked into the center of the clearing, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes tracking my every movement. The mark on my collarbone burned hot, and I felt Dane's presence through it, steadying, strengthening, refusing to let me face this alone even from a distance. Show them the mark, the council member commanded. I pulled the collar of my dress aside, revealing the symbol. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some pressed closer for a better look, others drew back as if burned. The mark is genuine, another council member confirmed. But marks can be forced, manipulated. We must determine if the bond is true, if this human is worthy. She stepped forward, her scarred hands raised. I propose a test. Let her prove she understands what it means to be pack. What kind of test? The Alpha King asked, his voice hard with warning. A hunt, the woman said. 3 wolves will pursue her through the forest. If she survives until dawn, she proves herself worthy of the pack's protection. Horror flooded through me. The pack erupted in voices, some agreeing, some protesting. Through it all, Dane's rage burned bright enough to feel from across the clearing. "Absolutely not," he snarled, taking a step forward and nearly collapsing. His father caught him, eased him back. "She's human. She can't outrun wolves. This isn't a test. It's an execution." "Then let her refuse," the councilwoman said calmly. "Let her show us she values her life over her claim to pack membership. We'll send her back to the human world, unharmed, with generous compensation for her trouble." The choice hung in the air like a blade. I could leave. Go back to Millbrook, to my small apartment and smaller life. Forget this impossible world of shifters and bonds and ancient laws, but the mark on my collarbone burned, and through the bond, I felt Dane's agony at the thought of losing me. More than that, I felt something else stirring in my chest. Not fear, but anger. Anger at being judged, tested, found wanting simply for being human, for being different. I'd spent my whole life making myself smaller, quieter, less, trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for me, not anymore. "I accept," I heard myself say. The clearing erupted. Dane's roar of protest cut through the noise, but I kept my eyes on the councilwoman. She smiled, a cold, satisfied expression that made it clear she'd expected me to refuse, to prove myself a coward. "The hunt begins at midnight," she announced. 3 hours to prepare. Choose your hunters wisely. Make them fierce but not cruel. We test her worthiness, not her will to die." The Alpha King's expression was thunderous, but pack law bound even him. "Emma will have access to anything she needs. Supplies, weapons, guidance. And if any hunter goes beyond the bounds of testing into true violence, they answer to me personally." The crowd began to disperse, voices raised in argument and speculation. Crane appeared at my side, his face grim. That was either very brave or very foolish. "Probably both," I admitted, my legs suddenly shaky now that the moment had passed. "Emma!" Dane's voice cut across the clearing. He was moving toward me, ignoring his father's protests, his face a mask of fury and fear. When he reached me, his hand caught my arm, gentle despite the intensity burning in his eyes. "You can't do this. Tell them you refuse. I'll find another way to—" "There is no other way," I interrupted quietly. "If I refuse, I lose any chance of staying, and I stopped, surprised by the truth rising in my throat. "I don't want to leave." His eyes searched mine, amber depths reflecting torchlight and something deeper. "You could die out there. I could have died saving you. Should have, probably, but I didn't." I covered his hand with mine. "I'm stronger than I look, Dane. Your father is about to find out." "So is your pack." Something shifted in his expression, surprise melting into fierce pride. "Then you won't face this unprepared." He turned to Crane. "Get Iris. And Marcus. He knows the forest better than anyone. If Emma's going to survive a hunt, she needs every advantage we can give her." The next 3 hours blurred together in a frenzy of preparation. Marcus, a grizzled wolf with scars marking decades of hunts, taught me how to move through the forest quietly, how to mask my scent using mud and crushed pine needles, how to read the landscape for hiding places and escape routes. Iris brought supplies, a small pack with water, dried meat, a knife I barely knew how to use. "The hunters will be in wolf form," Marcus explained, his voice gravelly. "They'll track by scent primarily, but also by sound and movement. Your best chance is to stay downwind, stay quiet, and use the terrain. Don't try to outrun them. You can't. Outwit them instead." Dane watched it all from a chair someone had dragged into the training yard, his frustration at his own weakness evident in every tense line of his body. Through the bond, I felt his fear for me mixing with reluctant admiration. When midnight approached, the pack gathered at the forest's edge. 3 wolves stepped forward, large, powerful, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. The councilwoman raised her hand. "The rules are simple. Emma Hartley has until dawn to evade her hunters. If she's caught and brought down, she fails the test. If she survives until first light, she proves herself worthy of pack membership." She looked at me. "Any questions?" "Just one," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. What happens if I do more than survive? What if I win? Surprised murmurs rippled through the crowd. The councilwoman's eyes narrowed. Win? How does prey win against predators? I guess we'll find out. I adjusted the pack on my shoulders and met Dane's gaze across the crowd. Through the bond, I felt his fear transform into something else. Hope, maybe, or belief. Come back to me, his presence whispered through the mark. Count on it, I thought back, and stepped into the forest. The hunt began with a howl that raised every hair on my body, then silence. The predators giving their prey a head start before the real chase began. I ran, using everything Marcus had taught me, every instinct I'd developed from a lifetime of being overlooked, invisible. Because in this hunt, invisibility wasn't a weakness. It was my greatest weapon. The forest at night was a living thing, breathing, watching, waiting. I moved through it like a ghost, my feet finding soft ground instinctively, my breathing controlled despite the terror singing through my veins. The moon filtered through the canopy above, casting everything in silver and shadow, beautiful and deadly. Behind me, I heard them, 3 sets of paws hitting earth in perfect rhythm, the soft panting of predators on the hunt. They were giving me space, letting me run, building the tension before they closed in. It was a game to them, a test. I had no intention of playing by their rules. Marcus had shown me the forest's secrets in those 3 hurried hours. The places where limestone broke through soil, masking scent. The streams that could confuse a trail. The old growth trees with hollow trunks large enough to hide a person. But more than that, he'd taught me something crucial. Wolves hunted with patterns, with predictable strategies honed over centuries. Prey that broke those patterns had a chance. I ran for 20 minutes, long enough to establish a clear trail heading east toward the mountain ridge. Then, at a rocky outcropping where a stream cut through stone, I did something the hunters wouldn't expect. I doubled back. Using the water to mask my scent, I worked my way upstream, my feet numb from the icy flow, my dress soaked and heavy, the cold bit deep, but I'd grown up in winter. I knew how to endure. When I found a massive fallen oak, its root system creating a natural cave, I crawled inside and began to wait. Through the bond, I felt Dane's anxiety spiking. He was experiencing this hunt through me, feeling my fear, my determination, my desperate gambit. I tried to project calm, to let him know I had a plan, but the bond carried emotions more than thoughts. And right now my emotions were a tangled mess. The hunters passed by my hiding spot twice. I pressed myself deeper into the hollow, controlling my breathing, my heartbeat, every small sound that might give me away. The 3rd time, they stopped. I heard snuffling, the sound of a large body moving through undergrowth. Then a voice. Male, deep, tinged with frustration. She's gone. The trail just ends, doubled back. A female voice, sharp with annoyance. Clever, more clever than expected. We're wasting time. The 3rd hunter, rougher, angrier. We should split up, cover more ground. No. We hunt as a pack. The female again, clearly the leader. She's human. She can't have gone far. We find her scent. We find her. They moved away, spreading out in a search pattern that would eventually close around my hiding spot. I had maybe 20 minutes before they circled back and found me. I needed a new plan. The knife Iris had given me pressed against my hip. An idea formed. Reckless, probably stupid, but better than waiting to be caught. I pulled out the dried meat from my pack and the knife, working quickly in the darkness. If the hunters were tracking by scent, I'd give them something to track. I created a false trail, dragging the meat through the undergrowth in a pattern leading north toward the deeper forest. At the end of the trail, I hung my jacket from a low branch, making it visible from a distance. Then I climbed. The old oak beside my hiding spot had branches that extended toward a cluster of younger pines. My arms screamed in protest as I pulled myself up, my wet dress making every movement harder. But I'd climbed trees as a child. It had been one of my few escapes from a world that didn't want me. The skill came back like muscle memory. I made it to the pines just as the hunters returned. From my perch 20 feet above ground, I watched them discover the meat trail. The female shifted, a stomach-churning process of bones reorganizing and fur melting into skin, until a tall woman with sharp features stood in the moonlight. She's trying to lead us away, she said, studying the trail with narrowed eyes. But why? What's she protecting? Maybe she's more desperate than clever, the male hunter suggested, also shifting to human form. He was stocky, muscular, with scars crossing his bare chest. Maybe she's just running blind. Maybe, the female agreed, but she didn't sound convinced. Kane, check the area. Make sure she's not circling back again. The third hunter, Kane, prowled the perimeter in wolf form, his massive head swinging back and forth as he scented the air. He passed directly beneath my tree. So close I could have reached down and touched him. My fingers dug into the bark, my entire body rigid with the effort of staying silent. Kane paused, his head tilted up. My heart stopped, but he was looking at my jacket, hanging from the branch like a flag of surrender. He barked once, sharp and triumphant, and the other hunters converged. She went north, the female decided, deeper into the forest, trying to lose us in the old growth. It won't work, the male said confidently. We know these woods. Every trail, every hiding spot. She's human. She doesn't stand a chance. They shifted back to wolf form and took off north, following the false trail I'd laid. I waited until their sounds faded completely, before allowing myself to breathe properly. Dawn was still 3 hours away. 3 hours to stay hidden, to stay ahead, to survive. I climbed down carefully and began moving south, back toward Packlands. It was counterintuitive, exactly what the hunters wouldn't expect. And it brought me closer to the bond I could feel pulling at my chest, the connection to Dane that had become a compass pointing home. The forest changed as I moved through it. The trees grew larger, older, their bark carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. This was the heart of Pack territory, the sacred ground that Marcus had warned me about. Few were allowed here without permission. But the bond pulled me forward, and I followed it into a clearing dominated by a single massive tree. Its trunk was wider than my apartment had been, its branches reaching toward the stars like hands in supplication. At its base, I saw stones arranged in a circle, and within that circle, a pool of water that reflected the moon with perfect clarity. I approached slowly, drawn by something I couldn't name. The water was impossibly clear, impossibly still. When I looked into it, I saw more than my reflection. I saw memories, not mine, but Dane's, flowing through the bond, his childhood racing through these woods, his father teaching him to hunt, to lead, to bear the weight of pack responsibility, the loneliness of being heir, of having every friendship tinged with politics, every relationship measured against duty, and beneath it all, the bone-deep certainty that he would die alone, unloved, unchoosing and unchosen by anyone who saw him rather than his title. Until a pale-haired girl had knelt in the snow and refused to let him go. Tears streaked my face as I watched his memories. I understood, finally, why the bond had formed. We were mirrors of each other, both lonely, both overlooked, both carrying wounds that had shaped us into people who understood what it meant to be invisible, to be alone. So you found it. I spun around. The female hunter stood at the clearing's edge in human form, naked and unbothered by it, her eyes reflecting moonlight. She wasn't alone. The male hunter and Kane flanked her, all three now in human form, all three watching me with expressions I couldn't quite read. You led us away, the female said, then came here, to the heart of Pack lands, to the sacred pool. She stepped closer. Do you know what this place is? I shook my head, my hand instinctively going to the knife at my hip. This is where the Pack's first Alpha King made his vow, to protect, to lead, to serve. Every heir in our history has come here before taking the throne, to look into the water and see the truth of themselves. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. Tell me, Emma Hartley, what did you see? I could have lied. Should have, maybe. But something about this place, this moment, demanded honesty. I saw him, I said quietly. Dane. His memories, his loneliness. I saw someone who understands what it means to be alone, even surrounded by others. I met her gaze. I saw someone like me. The hunters exchanged glances. Kane shifted uncomfortably, his scarred face troubled. The male hunter, broad and brutish just moments before, looked almost ashamed. We were supposed to test your fear, the female said softly, your ability to survive against predators. Instead, you taught us something. She knelt by the pool, trailing her fingers through water that didn't ripple. We forgot what it means to see someone, to really see them, beyond title or species or expectation. You saw our heir not as a prince or a wolf, but as someone who needed help, and he saw you, not as human or pack, but as kin. She stood, facing me fully. My name is Vera. These are my pack brothers, Cole and Kane. We were chosen as your hunters because we're traditionalists, because we believe in the old ways, in keeping pack bloodlines pure. A wry smile touched her lips. But the oldest way of all is this. Pack is not blood. Pack is choice. And Dane chose you. The bond proves it. Does that mean... I stopped, afraid to hope. It means, Cole said, his gruff voice gentler now, that you passed the test. Not by running or hiding, but by understanding what really matters. He glanced at the sky. Dawn's still an hour away, but I think we've seen enough. The council won't be happy, Kane warned. They expected us to chase you until you collapsed from exhaustion, to prove humans are weak. Then the council needs to expand their definition of strength, Vera said firmly. She looked at me, her expression respectful. Come. Let's take you back to Dane. He's been slowly losing his mind since the hunt started. The walk back to the compound felt surreal. My hunters, my pack brothers and sister now somehow, flanked me, and any wolf we encountered took one look at Vera's expression and stepped aside. Word spread before us like wildfire. The human survived. The human passed. The human found the sacred pool. By the time we reached the main clearing, it seemed the entire pack had gathered. They stood in silence as Vera led me to the platform where the Alpha King waited, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Dane stood despite clearly being in pain, his eyes locked on mine. The bond between us singing with relief and pride and something deeper, something we hadn't had time to name yet. The silver-haired council member stepped forward, his face tight with disapproval. The hunt was to last until dawn. It's been barely 3 hours. The hunt is over, Vera interrupted, her voice carrying across the clearing. We found her at the sacred pool, the heart of Packlands. She didn't just survive, she understood. She saw what matters. That's all the test we needed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The council member's jaw tightened. That's not... The rules state she must prove herself worthy, the Alpha King said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. And she has. Not just in surviving the hunt, but in saving my son. In bonding with him when she had no reason to trust us, no reason to risk herself. He stood, moving to the edge of the platform. Emma Hartley has proven herself worthy a dozen times over. Now it's time we prove ourselves worthy of her. He descended the steps and approached me. Up close, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the lines of worry that had deepened in the past days. But I also saw something else, acceptance, and perhaps even affection. Do you accept us? He asked quietly. Do you choose to be Pack, knowing the dangers, the challenges, the weight of what that means? I thought about my small apartment in Millbrook, my job at the general store, the life I'd been living, safe and small, and desperately lonely. I thought about the girl I'd been yesterday, invisible and overlooked. Then I looked at Dane, at the man who'd bonded with me in a moment of desperation and trust, at Vera and her pack brothers, who'd learned to see past their prejudices, at Iris with her kindness, Marcus with his gruff teaching, Crane with his protective loyalty, at the Alpha King himself, offering me a place in a world I'd never known existed. I thought about my mother's words, the promise I'd kept even when it cost me. Don't let this world harden your heart. I accept, I said clearly. I choose to be Pack. The Alpha King smiled, truly smiled, the expression transforming his severe features. Then, by the power vested in me as Alpha King of the Thornridge Pack, I welcome you, Emma Hartley. You are Pack. You are family. You are home. He pulled me into an embrace that smelled of pine and earth and something wild, and the pack erupted in howls, joyous, accepting, welcoming. I felt it through the bond, through the mark on my collarbone that burned bright and warm. This was belonging. This was what I'd been missing my entire life. When the Alpha King released me, Dane was there, pulling me against him despite his injuries, his face pressed into my hair. You scared me, he whispered roughly. Don't ever do that again. I survived, I said, my arms wrapping around him. I won. You did more than that. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. You changed us. Changed me. Emma, I don't fully understand this bond yet, what it means or where it leads, but I know I don't want to be without it. Without you. The words hung between us, weighted with implications we weren't ready to fully explore, but that was okay. We had time now. Time to understand the bond, to learn each other, to figure out what came next. The pack will want to celebrate, the Alpha King said, his hand resting briefly on my shoulder. But first, both of you need rest. Real rest. The healer's orders. Dane looked like he wanted to argue, but a wave of exhaustion hit him so hard I felt it through the bond. He swayed and I steadied him. Our roles reversed from that night in the forest. Come on, I said softly. Let's get you back to bed before you collapse on your father's throne. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound rough but genuine. Bossy. I like it. As we made our way back through the compound, pack members approached to offer congratulations. To touch my shoulder or nod respect. Iris appeared with fresh clothes and promises of a proper celebration once we'd both recovered. Marcus gave me a warrior's salute that made my throat tight. Even the council members, though some still looked disapproving, didn't try to stop or challenge me. Back in Dane's chambers, I helped him to bed, his body finally giving in to exhaustion and healing. But before I could move away, his hand caught mine. Stay, he said quietly. Just stay close. I sleep better when I can feel you through the bond. I should have gone to my own room, should have maintained some distance while we figured out what this bond meant, what we meant to each other. But the pull was too strong, the connection too new and precious to deny. I climbed onto the bed beside him, careful not to jar his injuries. He shifted to face me, his amber eyes already heavy with sleep, but watching me like I might disappear. Thank you, he said, for not walking away, for choosing us, for choosing me. Thank you for seeing me, I replied, my fingers finding his, for choosing me first when you didn't have to. He smiled, his eyes finally closing. Through the bond, I felt his consciousness slip toward dreams, peaceful now, no longer edged with pain or fear. I stayed awake a while longer, watching the moonlight move across his face, marveling at the impossible turn my life had taken. 3 days ago, I'd been invisible, overlooked, alone. Now I was pack. I was family. I was home. And as I finally let sleep take me, Dane's hand warm in mine, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd found exactly where I belonged. The sun rose over Thornridge, painting the forest in shades of gold and amber. A new day. A new beginning. And whatever challenges lay ahead, council politics, pack dynamics, the complexities of a bond between human and air, we'd face them together. Because that's what pack did. That's what family did. And for the first time in my life, I had both.